What's going on? Welcome back to Trending Stocks. Today we're going to talk to you about SoFi. I want to go over some expectations for this upcoming week, what might cause volatility in the stock price, and go over everything else that you need to know. But first, make sure to hit that thumbs up, and with that, let's get right to it. So starting off this upcoming week, you do have a lot of things coming out. So a lot of Fed speakers as well for data. You have PPI on Tuesday, CPI Wednesday. You also have retail sales and initial jobless claims on Thursday. And that's one thing that the market is going to be looking at very closely is consumer linked data. And that's obviously over and above the CPI. So it is going to be a crazy roller coaster of a week. And even going into this week, you do see the fear and greed index under the extreme fear category. So 24. So people's appetite for risk won't necessarily be there. So it's going to be an interesting scenario. A lot of that is going to instantly translate to interest rates, which in turn will affect growth stocks, SoFi, many others. So right now for the September 18th meeting, there is a 48.5% likelihood of a 50 basis point cut, and then a 51.5% likelihood of a 25 basis point cut. So assuming it kind of stays to the status quo, if not, maybe orients more towards the 50, I think that would be really good for the broader market. And obviously, like I said, through that, SoFi. But for this upcoming week, though, there's no real anything planned for SoFi, so no kind of fireside chats, nothing like that. So it is going to be relatively quiet from them, at least for planned stuff. One thing that I did want to bring up, though, is this. So 13Fs. Generally, I don't like to bring up a lot of this, only because it is rather delayed information, but there's one that stood out to me. So 𝗪𝗧𝗪 Financial LLC. So they did unfortunately sell out 100% of their position. And I think this might happen more and more in the coming quarters, is institutions just getting discouraged with SoFi, because I think generally a lot of people, and retail as well, invest in SoFi because they know they hit home run earnings. They are going to, like, the growth rate is phenomenal, much better than the brick and mortar banks. But at the same time, there is a certain level of manipulation. And the reason why 𝗪𝗧𝗪 stood out to me is they've been actually petitioning the SEC quite a lot recently against manipulation. And so this one right here was the latest form that they did to the SEC, which is dated July 15th, 2024. This one's more oriented towards kind of small micro cap stocks, but there's been plenty of these other petitions that would encumber, for instance, SoFi, just very heavily shorted stocks, not justified, and everything like that. So I think, like I said, if everything continues how it is, and there is just a lot of manipulation with SoFi, I think that is going to really discourage a lot of investors and also institutions kind of investing on the long haul. So once again, it's not really influencing this week exactly, but something I just wanted to bring up. And speaking of manipulation, shorts. So right here, you do have 17% of the free floats being shorted. Works out to be 177.94 million shares overall are being shorted. And the reason why the short interest did change is because a couple of days back, as you can kind of see on August the 9th, NASDAQ did disclose the true amount of shares being shorted. So as of July 31st, which again is rather delayed, but as of July 31st, there was 181.5 million shares overall being shorted, and that works out to be 17.48%. What Ortex does is they take this information and calculate up to the present. So this is why you do have, over this last little bit, shorts have been returning some. So this is why it went from 17.48 to where we are now, 17 flat. So kind of interesting to see, but nonetheless, with a lot of the data coming out this week, could really influence the broader market. Anticipate shorts to be relatively active, and I'll go over options as well on what they are kind of doing with that. And then again, speaking of manipulation, cost to borrow minimum being negative does mean a broker out there is still trying to drum up business because they are paying people to short SoFi. So there is a lot of manipulation with SoFi. It's just very unfortunate because I think fundamentally a lot of people invest in it knowing the good growth, but it just time again, it just gets hounded down. And yeah, so cost to borrow average is 0.48% as well. So something to keep in mind. Options, so looking at the open interest, so for last week's chain of August 9th, so with it closing at 663, so that does mean that the 650 strike prices are going to be exercised. So come Monday, you might see a nice blip up because market makers will have to cover 1.2 million shares. For this upcoming week though, you see walls at 6 and 650 to be relatively small, so 7,000 at that 6 and then 5,000 at that 650, but you do have some pretty strong walls, $7 plus. So 35,000 at that 7, 24,750, 38,000 at the 8, and 84,000 at the 850. So I think a lot of us already do know that that is where, especially close to these strike prices, you do see shorts a little bit more active because, of course, them and market makers, probably one and among the same, don't want SoFi to close above those points. So I think SoFi might be having the green light to run up to roughly around $7, but probably not exceed that. So we'll just, again, have to wait and see. So that's what might happen, obviously Monday and everything else. And usually the first trading day, you do see kind of the closest strike prices jump up by 40%. So SoFi does need to strike pretty fast. And then alongside that, you need a lot of good data for this upcoming week. And there's been no new analyst ratings, nothing like that coming from SoFi whatsoever over this last couple trading days, and I don't really anticipate any new analyst ratings this week because it's kind of too far out from their earnings. But when it comes down to it, with it at $6.64, it is trading between this S1 and the pivot. So 652 is a strong support that you'll want to watch for, and then 725 will be that next strong resistance / target. Very wide gaps, so just anticipate a lot of volatility, and there has been a lot of volatility, as you can kind of tell, just massive amount. So this is why, as I've stated, very volatile stocks. Highly recommend you guys researching options. It can be very beneficial in getting a lot of additional premiums. So again, keep that into consideration. But on the actual chart itself, it is lower percentile of the Bollinger Band. You really want to watch for SoFi to get above this key point right here, which is their 50-day moving average. Generally in the past, whenever SoFi does exceed that and gets above it, this is kind of results in like a 20-30% run. So definitely watch for it to once again regain and hopefully move higher. Looking at stochastic though, you do see it at 22, so that is arguably considered oversold. So if a good piece of news does come out associated to SoFi or just the broader market, you should see a rush of value investors getting in. So again, something to keep in mind. A number of retail investors have been getting out. So when it comes down to SoFi and just a lot of other growth stocks and I guess generally the broader market, as I mentioned in my Friday video, I have been seeing lower and lower volume. And so I think right now the market needs to feel a little bit more comfortable before a big rotation does happen. Because I talked about a big rotation roughly around 1 month ago, and that's when people were really anticipating 2 back-to-back rate cuts. So going back over here for the September and also for the November meetings, because of just the market's very strong. And of course, at the same time, inflation data has been coming down, but now people are having and wanting rate cuts because to avoid a recession. So different mentality right now. So I think at this stage in the game, you are still seeing a lot of money just waiting on the sidelines in money markets just to have the all clear. So based on the latest data, in excess of $6 trillion is sitting in money markets. And so you can kind of see the last blip. I was anticipating for it to go down a little bit more, but regrettably, it looks like it did go up. So yeah, big money right now is still rather earning, was it the 4% or whatever it is in money markets rather than investing in the broader market. So hopefully with good data, you'll see this kind of move higher, and then you might have more money getting back into the market because obviously, as I've brought up in many videos in the past, typically lower volume on a daily basis, that just kind of increases the level of manipulation. So it's a kind of a flawed mentality that we are currently in. So let me know your thoughts on SoFi. Where do you guys see things going? I assume based on all the data and the forecasts that we should be closer to that $7 range. But again, given the fear in the market. If one of the data points does come out and it isn't necessarily the best, anticipate more of a swift pullback. So again, a lot of volatility is going to be anticipated with SoFi and just a lot of other growth stocks, right? So don't forget to hit that thumbs up and subscribe. Hopefully everyone's having an amazing weekend thus far. And with all that said, appreciate all of you watching.